Radio Free Skaro.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 700. I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Morning in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
Yep, 700 episodes. No other extraneous recordings have ever existed of Radio Free Skaro. It's just been these 700 episodes and no others.
Yep, I agree.
Happy 700 for us. 700 episodes. We don't. The numbers don't seem to be as much of a milestone as is the year. Next week technically is, because our actual anniversary is August 15th when our first episode came out. So we look at it as years, because let me tell you, folks, when you get to be our age, you don't count the episodes, you count the years. And
we were just talking about off mic, old cafes from Canadian department stores. That's how old we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought we counted the rings at this point.
None of those department stores, be it Zellers, be it Woolworths, the Bay still exists. Eaton's no longer does. Sears doesn't. All these get department stores with cafeterias are long
gone like tears in the rain.
Yeah, like Rutger Hauer, R.I.P. Next week, so August 15th, it sort of falls in between, but next week, I guess, is kind of like, hey, look at us, we're 13. We're going to be Jodie Whittaker number of doctor years.
We're going to be bar mitzvah or bar mitzvah, depending on which it is.
Yeah, that too. We'll be teenagers, finally catching up to our mentality. The
podcast can finally sign up for an online account.
Does it take?
Wow! For that.
Probably best if it doesn't, though.
Yeah, I didn't know that actually. But more on that next week as we look back. We're not going to look back that much. We did it like 3 years ago when we celebrated our 10th. And let me tell you, after you celebrate your 10th, folks, it all goes downhill from there. But not today. Not today. For episode 700, we got an interview with Graham Kibble-White from TV Years. TV Years is putting out a big, giant Sci-Fi edition of the magazine coming out this coming week. It'll be in, perhaps as you're listening to this, you're walking to the newspaper agents to pick up a copy of your own. Or perhaps going into a department store and finding it there, that you can see that while you enjoy your scrambled eggs and mash in the basement of the Woolworths at Heritage Mall. There's a deep cut for Edmontonian listeners. Oh, wow.
That is super, only Edmonton listeners of a certain age will get Heritage Mall.
Very certain age.
With Wizards Arcade. There you go. I'm diving even deeper.
Mm-hmm. Very big. In other news, there's a whole bunch of action doll. Oh my God, this is like a giant.
It's Dollygeddon, my friends.
Dollygeddon, the Comic-Con of Dollygeddon announcements, which we'll get to later on. Not too much later on, but the big news is that Doctor Who. Currently in the United States has a streaming home, so to speak, on Amazon Prime. That will no longer be the case. HBO Max, the new streaming service coming from HBO, perhaps to run in tandem beside HBO Now, or perhaps it'll all be encompassed in one giant thing. They have acquired, along with many other BBC series, Doctor Who, TV's Doctor Who, series 1 through 11, for streaming. And then once it airs on BBC America in early 2020, and after the rights windows expire for, repeats and everything like that, series 12 will go to HBO Max. So there you go.
I have to admit, as somebody in Canada this doesn't actually impact because HBO comes through Crave, which means equally nothing to Americans. I don't understand what HBO's tiered services actually represent. I can't figure out what's what, or there's 5 of them or something, isn't there? It's very confusing.
Well, Warner Media is the entity that owns HBO now, and so Warner Media, they're going to have Friends on there, for instance. They're going to put their own series Friends on there. But they're also the streaming world is a complicated world right now because
more than it needs to be.
Yeah, because some of these entities sold rights to their programs before they had any idea of having their own streaming service. So, for instance, a big one is Warner Media owns all the Harry Potter films. Big giant franchise, right? They can't actually show their own films on their own streaming service, HBO Max, until the deal with wherever it's on right now in the U.S., Netflix or Amazon Prime or whoever, expires in 2025. 2025.
Baffling to me.
Yeah, and similarly, CBS All Access is now here in Canada, but they didn't arrive until after they sold the rights to their big show, Star Trek Discovery, to Space, soon to be CTV Sci-Fi, who actually streams them on Crave, which is part of so it's all
and Netflix pumps a bunch of money into Discovery as well.
Exactly, and they show it elsewhere around the world. So
that mean Picard? I'll have to get CBS All Access for Picard, which is a problem.
It'll be on Space. It's on Space. It's on Space.
Oh, okay, good.
It's part of that. So I imagine Space had some deal with hey, any Star Trek entities we get, not you, CBS All Access. Good luck selling the Good Wife repeats to people on your
What's
CBS
going to have to
Access.
offer Canadians now? Nothing.
Well, there's a lot to offer some Canadians, I suppose. But anyway, starting next year, HBO Max. So if you have Amazon Prime, you won't find your Doctor Who on there. However, the good news is the Arizona solution still exists probably on Amazon Prime. So you can
I have
watch
yet to finish it, surprisingly.
I have yet to start it. So
I watched about 10 minutes and I was like, maybe later.
Yeah. I don't know I don't think the price has been announced for HBO Max. I know Disney Plus is launching later on this year and is setting the bar at $6 or $7, but even they have come out public and says, yeah, we're going to lose money the first 2 or 3 years of this, building an audience, but they have the money to lose, and I'm not too sure if HBO Max wants to start off that. So, if you rely on streaming services to watch your new series Doctor Who, then you will have to get HBO Max. And here we go, as we've said earlier on this podcast, I'm sure, it's the beginning of the cable package era of streaming services.
Well, I don't think it's the beginning. I think we're well into that.
Oh, we're well into it, but some of these services aren't even started yet, Yeah,
but there's still enough other ones out there that are still, competing and buying and monopolizing.
But these ones, I think the splintering is beginning, though. As these entities realize how much value there is in their own product, that they can start their own streaming service and not just shove it to Netflix.
Maybe as Doctor Who fans, we had an advantage and a lead in the market on that when you think of how little the BBC thought of Doctor Who back in the day, and then they finally changed their mind in the 70s and 80s and wow, actually, they kind of took a turn for the worse in the 80s, I suppose. But
it did a little bit.
But nevertheless, they realized the value of their own thing and started to try to capitalize on it, like JNT with all his convention stuff and shooting in Singapore and whatever.
It's funny.
Singapore was kind of a dodge for a holiday, frankly. But
it's funny how, it's as we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, we are old. And remember when Doctor Who, certainly in these parts of the world where we grew up, where the three of us were basically the only people who admired Doctor Who as much as we did growing up, I still, to this day, even though Variety announces this deal in an exclusive thing, Variety magazine is using Doctor Who as a headline, I still feel imposter syndrome on behalf of Doctor Who whenever it gets mentioned.
I saw somebody go by me on the SkyTrain the other day in a TARDIS dress, and I'm like, what? It just doesn't seem real.
I know.
Well, the third, fourth, whatever paragraph of this article says, Doctor Who is one of television's all-time most beloved series on both sides of the pond, and we are happy to be the exclusive streaming stewards for this BBC gem, said the chief content officer at HBO Max.
You know what we're doing? We're Canadian. We can't be happy in being right.
I know.
No,
or in victory. We have to muddle through.
We are happy in being right because Stephen is right. It just seems, even after all these years, it seems so freaking weird that people are walking around on public transport in TARDIS dresses, or we're getting positive comments about Doctor Who and competition to be the ones to show it. And
but my point is, as
higher.
Canadians, we're like, we can't possibly like something popular. Like, how could something we like be good?
I find it odd actually that they announced other hit BBC shows like The Office, Top Gear, Luther, The Honorable Woman. Like Luther came back for a 5th series recently, but I told Top Gear is still an ongoing entity. The Office aired almost 20 years ago. The Honorable Woman was a one-off series as well. 5 or 7 years ago now? But
The Office only ran the 2 series over there, right? And Christmas special or something. Top Gear is on just wrap season series 27, something like that. And that's the modern iteration that was started by Jeremy Clarkson et al. Not the previous version of Top Gear.
I always found that very confusing. Like America's Next Top Model is on season 30, but that's because they do like 3 a year or something. So it sounds like it's been around since like the 80s, which of course it hasn't. No.
I wonder how Doctor Who is treated. I mean, we're in Canada here, folks. Any Americans out there, feel free to tweet or post on our Facebook, or even on our website at radiofreescaro.com how you have felt Doctor Who has been on Amazon Prime. I know that usually I try to watch the DVDs or Blu-rays that I have of Doctor Who, but in research for an upcoming miniscope, I was watching the episodes on Crave and here in Canada, and sure enough, it was the episodes with the dips to commercial black and everything, which is just appalling. And I don't think they had. I'm assuming they didn't have that same issue on Amazon Prime, but maybe they just took the BBC America versions with the commercial breaks in them as well and just ported them across to their streaming service like Space did and Crave did. I hope that is a practice that ends with Series 12, because Series 11 is also not even the proper aspect ratio. It's 16:9 as opposed to 2:1. I'm intrigued. Leave your comments on how you've enjoyed Doctor Who on Amazon Prime, if you've enjoyed it at all, and will you be subscribing to HBO Max ere the time comes in the spring of 2020? Let us know. Your voice matters to us, Radio Free Skaro. This past Comic-Con, the Comic-Con of No Doctor Who, there was the BBC America panel. I mean the booth rather in the dealer's room, and they had a booth to check out, to play a preview of the Edge of Time VR game, and the official Doctor Who YouTube channel, which we remind you to subscribe to. Has a brief clip, like about 4 minutes of gameplay, and it looks kind of neat. It's like you're like, it's first person stuff, and you're trying to like build a thing so that you can like do a thing, and all the time like Jodie Whittaker is sort of like telling you what to do as Doctor Who. It's kind of cool. Did either of you have a chance to look at that their video?
Yeah, I watched it just a few minutes ago, and you're assembling a thing like some sort of device. I'm like, well, this is like Fallout and various other games I've played, so until you have this thing strapped to your face, it's difficult to tell.
Yeah. I had hypothesized that I would buy a VR headset, but they're expensive. I never realized how expensive they are, and I don't understand them. I'm old. I don't understand how they work. Like, I don't like to do. Is it magical? I know that Xbox doesn't have a VR,
which I find surprising.
Yeah, PlayStation does, but then there's also HTC Vive, which I don't understand if that's like. So it's the logistics of the thing that I'm baffled about, and I don't know how. I don't want to like make an incorrect purchase. Basically, is what I mean to say. So I probably won't buy it after all, despite all my wishes and desires and boasting and stuff. But so maybe this 4-minute video will just have to suffice.
Make do.
It's this week also sees the cinema screening of The End of Time in
I'm sorry,
cinema theater places in the United States. So for all those going to that, enjoy. If you're in the UK, you can get all the David Tennant specials. Every time I see the specials pop up there, I think it's the ska band from the late 70s, early 80s from the UK. It is not, sadly. No, but there's a steelbook. Yeah, it would be. There's a steelbook coming out for pre-order, coming out October 21st, that contains all the Tennant specials. And there's some nice artwork, as all these steelbooks often tend to have. Spoiler alert, it's David Tennant regenerating on the front cover. So if you haven't seen them, you know how it ends. So yeah, £24.99 is what the price is to get the old Steelbook in the good old United Kingdom. October 21st. Well, October is going to be a fun month in the UK, so maybe you can while away watching The End of Time as the month draws.
You can watch a better alternative to the current political situation in The End of Time.
Good times. All right. Also some DVD news. So apparently on Tuesday, even though the BBC Shop website hasn't updated itself yet, I'm assuming it will. TV shows on DVD.com, which is no longer at TV shows on DVD.com. It's only on their Facebook page. So we've linked to their Facebook page. They have posted that a whole bunch of those made-on-demand DVDs that are coming out. Maybe they chucked about 20 more out onto the shelves, basically, of the classic DVD range. There are a bunch more, including Terror of the Autons, Face of Evil, Five Doctors, the 25th Anniversary Edition, Greatest Show in the Galaxy, and The End of Time, which is everywhere. It's coming out on as a made-on-demand DVD set. And then 2 weeks hence, The Web Planet, you can return to Vortis if you haven't had a chance yet. Invasion of the Dinosaurs, Revenge of the Cybermen, Black Orchid, and Paradise Towers are going to come out. So those are the next batch of DVDs coming out on BBC Shop, apparently.
And still none of the, I guess some of them in the first batches, but still none of the like super duper pricey North America expensive ones like Battlefield or War Games or things like that are long out of print.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see them shatter the eBay tyranny.
Yeah. But I would just buy the Blu-rays. But then again, maybe you don't want to buy the Blu-rays. Maybe you just want to buy the DVDs, and that's why this is for you. Someone has colorized episode 1 of Tomb of the Cybermen. How about that? Isn't that fun and exciting?
They haven't done that bad a job either, just watching over it. It's like, it's kind of impressive what you can pull off nowadays at home. Presumably at home.
Yeah. I mean, it flickers a little bit. I'm sure the restoration team would probably do something with it. Oddly enough, some of the color kind of looked like it was like chroma dot recovery, even though the chroma dots wouldn't obviously have been there because it was shot in black and white. But it kind of has that sort of early DVD
unevenness.
Yeah, it's got a quaint in a way. So, but strong work from the person on Twitter, whoever has colorized it. Hoovy and Leap did it. Okay, perfect. Yeah. All right, that's all the preamble to the big news of this episode, which is a whole host of new action dollies.
Ridiculous amount of action dollies.
I'm glad that we had about 4 or 5 days to bask in this, because if this had come out on Sunday or whenever we recorded last, I'm not sure Warren would be able to speak that much. But
no, I would be breathing shallowly.
Yes, they did an official launch, an unboxing video, which is kind of great. I suggest watching the whole thing. It's we posted it on Twitter, I think, back at the time, which sort of like goes into a big explanation of all the things. We'll go through them in relatively rough order of how they unveiled them in that video. The first one is a Caves of Androzani Doctor and TARDIS set. So like it's Peter Davison's Doctor. But it's like after he's taken a roll down the mud. Basically, it's him as he's running back to the TARDIS. There's no celery because it's been used, and then there's dirt on his coat. And the TARDIS itself is a little bit dirty and dusty, too.
Yeah, a few of these I'm not going to get because I don't need doubles that have dirt on their coats or whatever else. But a few I would, which we'll get into later. But this one, I'm like...
Stacey has a new hat.
Yeah.
She certainly does. And, he's got mud on him. I mean, that's great if you want... But... What I wish they'd done here is also included Shiraz Jack.
Does he exist in dolly form? I don't think he does he?
I believe he does. I think he does.
He does? Oh, well,
I'm pretty sure he does.
You need to get him, Warren. I don't understand.
I agree. I do.
I don't. If he exists, you should have him. I don't understand. I think
along with Morgus and Stotts and Timon. Yeah.
They do not exist. No, you can. He does exist. He was in a 2-pack with Perry. That's why I don't have him.
That's why. He does. So he does exist.
Yes.
Get it.
All right. I'll get on that.
Well, why are you on this? You should go now. I think the set does need like a vial of bat's milk, perhaps.
Yes.
He could be carrying. Because his hand is clearly, positioned to carry something. It's obviously not a sonic screwdriver. So
It needs one of those little, the things you get in Cracker Jacks where you'd move it back and forth and it would shift. You need one of those with all the different heads floating around and the master.
Oh,
yeah. I just hold it above his head.
A regeneration scene playset.
Exactly.
As basically like a baby mobile kind of thing. That's sort of like spinning around.
With surprise Adric.
I just said, Doctor. Doctor. It's the only thing that we hear, and it's on a loop for 24/7. Doctor.
It drives you completely mental.
Nuts. Yeah, that's why he regenerates. That's the thing that spurs him on. So anyway, it's a good-looking set and a good-looking TARDIS, too. The Tom Yardley-Jones TARDIS from the 1980s. The next one we're talking about here is the exclusive. This is B&M exclusives, by the way, so... it's only sold at B&M. So if Warren, you have to find someone in the UK to go hunt these down
I'm
for
on
you.
it. Trust me.
It's the Fourth Doctor and TARDIS set from Shada, the lost incomplete story of Shada, with the sort of the spinning blue light on the top, and although I have to say the hair sculpt of Tom Baker there isn't quite Shada-esque because his Shada hair was slightly shorter. I think you'll find. So the
scarf is wrong as well.
Is it wrong? Oh, the scarf's wrong too.
Yeah.
Well,
the Shada scarf has like patches.
It's still
it does.
cool.
Yeah, it does.
Certain
That's right.
parts.
Yeah.
So unless they're meant to be obscured by the angle used, I don't know.
That could be it too. Anyway, it's a cool looking.
He doesn't look mad as a balloon, which my classic first season of Tom Baker, Fourth Doctor figure. He looks insane. Like he's going to murder every other dolly.
That's right, he does. He's kind of like, he's got this sort of wide-eyed grin, but really he's just like, I want to kill you.
Well,
Yep.
On a related thing, if you look at the box shot, it looks like the scarf is pointing out and forward, like it's ready to poke somebody's eye out.
It does, actually. It looks like a ramp. You could drive it up him or something like that. It should also come with a little. Honestly, it should come with Skagro and that outfit because
the silver ball
and the silver ball and maybe the bicycle, maybe a bicycle and a book.
The book especially, yeah,
yeah, that could be.
And a punt. You could actually get like him with the Romana figure and a little boat.
Oh, and it actually floats. That would be even better.
And the little guy looks like Ronnie Corbett in the bowler hat.
That too, or perhaps maybe actually this is a much easier thing to include in this in the packaging. You could just have like a black rhombus or something like that to for the time scoop in the Five Doctors. You could just scoop them up.
Or more importantly, the action figure should only be half finished.
That's true,
and half animated. The bottom half is actually cell shaded.
Perfect.
But of the Ian Levine version.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes, not even the official one. Not even the official one, the Ian Levine version. There. Free advice for you there, Character Options. For good, thanks for consulting with us.
I'm sure they're writing this down right now and
Yeah.
taking that paper and scrunching it up and throwing it over their shoulders.
The next one, these are all coming in late August, by the way, is the Two Doctors exclusive set with Perry wearing that little tinfoil top that she had on for most of the episode there, and a Sontaran, oddly shorter than Patrick Troughton, given that they were the
with the
tallest
goatee,
Sontarans in history. With the goatee, though.
Goatee.
Yeah, the Clinton Grain, R.I.P. Sontaran. And then the Second Doctor, as played by Patrick Troughton, but he's androgum-ized. He's got like the orange eyebrows and stuff like that. So I think they should have Shock Guy as well. Shock Guy, the Quantum Gregwood should be in here.
Where's my Servala / what's her name of the Quantum?
Cassini.
Cassini of the Quantum Greg, yeah, or the Dancing.
In fact,
Greg.
where's my Blake 7 variant series? Come on, why aren't there Blake 7 dollies?
And why does it not include a jar of cyanide for killing butterflies?
That's true.
Or whatever you choose to use it for.
An Oscar Botcherby one. I think they should have like an Oscar Botcherby set where it's the butterfly one and then him just lying dead in a restaurant while literally no one gets up and goes, "Oh my God, someone was just murdered in the restaurant."
Yeah, and a version of the dead Danya Arana as well.
That's true. All the just dead characters from the Two Doctors.
And
Wow, this is grim.
Yeah,
a smoking failed time machine.
That too. The
Kartzreimer.
Yeah. Or maybe even just the green goo version of the Sontarans. They should have those big giant guns. Remember those guns? Two Doctors? Those are the best things.
And where's dazed Jamie?
No, feral Jamie in that weird jungle gym of a inner workings of the space station.
Yeah, where's the jungle gym playset?
Oh, that would be so much fun. I think honestly, when carry it back to last week's Fluid Legs. I think we should make a jungle gym of the two doctors as one of the Doctor Who rides at the Doctor Who theme park we're going to have. So.
Yeah. They'll call it Unpopular Land.
Which was apparently also the two doctors. Also speaking of unpopular, Silver Nemesis is the seventh Doctor and Cybermen.
I love how these are all filling the gaps that nobody asked for.
Yeah, I know. That is the great thing about character options and their toys. They're thinking, what do we need? We need Silver Nemesis Cybermen, and we need that Sylvester McCoy action figure. He's got a slightly lighter coat. They actually made it slightly lighter because it was a very sunny shoot, and it looks very sunny and bright on screen. So he's there without the hat or umbrella, which he literally never appeared in, apart from when he's like playing when he's lying on the grass. But hey,
he is still a fan of straight blowing. That's
true. There should be a Courtney Pine set. I would love to see the Courtney Pine band.
And you need Dolores, what's her name?
Yeah,
in the limo set.
Yeah. And that's all it ever does. She can't actually get out of the limo. She's glued into the limo.
I think she was glued into the limo. That's the limo was part of it, basically. Darling John Nathan Turner, I cannot appear on the show unless I'm sitting in my limo. We surely do. And there's two Cybermen.
It's a little distressing that the Cybermen are literally identical, other than the black handlebars for the Cyber Leader.
Well, they kind of were though, but I see. What you mean.
They were. But they got the guns. That's the important thing.
Look like the folds of the tinfoil on the legs, like on the shins, and it's like identical.
But whatever. I'm fine with that. I mean, they're supposed to be identical, supposedly.
This McCoy dolly has kind of a Malcolm McLaren look to him.
Sure, I guess so.
He doesn't quite look like McCoy. He looks more like a sort of a gone to seed 70s punk.
Really?
Which I guess McCoy was, suppose. Yeah. So
with the red scarf hanging out of his pocket, that means he's with the Bloods.
Yeah. All right.
I think that's the same sculpt as the
or he's into blood play.
Yeah, the 11 Doctor set that I got all those years ago when
my
the current one.
Just looking at my dolly right now, he's a much cheerier dude with a hat.
Well, he's Warren. He's upset because he's in seventh era Doctor Who just for you.
Yeah, exactly.
There you are. So there you go. Seventh Doctor and Cyberman outfit. This is the one that garnered the most excitement. I think the Sontaran experiment. Or basically Sontarans, with Lynx and Steyr and Harry Sullivan, an action dolly form. Harry Sullivan.
I already have plans in motion for this one. I am definitely getting a Harry Sullivan dolly.
Yeah. And the molds, like the facial stuff for Lynx and Steyr, spot on.
They really are.
Yeah, they are pretty spot on.
Damn near perfect.
I honestly, I haven't looked that closely at the actual episodes themselves, because Sarah Jane Smith famously sort of think, it's Lynx, it's the Sontar, but it's obviously not. Because
they're both Kevin Lindsay, so
they are both Kevin Lindsay and stuff, but they did alter the mask a tiny bit for them.
He's even got the ping pong ball gun.
Ping pong ball, he does too.
Great, it's delightful. Look at this cheese ball 80s or 70s nonsense.
But where's really the robot? Good. Where's the gravity bar? Where's the cadre of South Africans?
Yeah, I need more South Africans. Perhaps I need all the rocks and grass and stuff. The all location. I need to see. I think they should have.
If you're gonna do it, you need a mobile shooting unit. You need the behind the scenes van.
Oh yeah, and you need
with the vision mixer inside it.
You need the ambulance that was carted Tom Baker away for his broken collarbone. I think that's the thing you could have included in the set too. They already have the Sontaran spaceships. Who needs that? But yeah, no. This is a cool set. I love that. I love the overcoat Harry look. That's a good one. So
yeah, no, as you said, the response to Harry as an action figure was explosive
and justified.
Absolutely. Late August, folks. Oh, what a time to be alive. There's still more. We're not done yet. We're a little over halfway done. There are some Big Finish exclusives here as well with Doctor and Dalek pairing sets for the 7th, 8th, and War Doctor. The 7th Doctor is basically the same as the same sculpt as the Silver Nemesis one, but he's got
way cool trousers.
Way cool.
Those are some weird trousers.
And a red jumper.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like because it's an older doc. There's his hair is a little bit grayer too. It's kind of like post TV, like around TV movie, not post TV movie Seventh Doctor, because that'd be very tough. But
his hair's not long enough to be TV movie Seventh Doctor.
That too. So it's a new variant on the Seventh Doctor as appearing, quote unquote, in Big Finish plays, as well as the Dalek looks great. Like that's a ice hot color scheme that the Dalek's got going on there, and all these Big Finish sets.
Bronze on gold,
yeah, it is really cool. And then there's the Eighth Doctor set, which was announced earlier. This is sort of the teaser with the New Zealand fan convention look of Paul McGann, which is essentially kind of a Christopher Eccleston with a Paul McGann head, but we won't look too much at that.
His jacket has buttons, though, and Eccleston's doesn't.
I don't often go for variants of Doctors, but I might for this one, just because it's so different than the TV movie Paul McGann I've got.
Yeah,
but the Dalek looks, speaking of good-looking Daleks, the blue and silver is gorgeous.
Yeah,
that is nice. Yeah,
the Dallas Cowboys Dalek there, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I think the previous one was like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah,
we probably talked about this before, but does this mean we should have a set with like a Green Bay Packers colored Dalek, and they can like fight each other or something?
I think
like,
that
it can be like the new Imperial versus whatever factions.
I think Green Bay Packers. That's like the community owned Daleks. Those are the ones that are sort of band together. They don't have a supreme Dalek. They're just like, hey, we're community owned. We're just gonna.
They have a 12-year-old girl as their leader. Yeah,
exactly. 12, played by Jasmine, whatever her name was. And the last one. We're at the end of this. Sad, rather. I was quite enjoying this. The War Doctor set with slightly older. He's got more of a white hair than the gray hair set that he had in the initial set. The late John Hurt, Sir John Hurt as it is, and then with the kind of like a chrome and gold Dalek. What's gold?
I was a little disappointed because, and this is just my own weirdness, but the main, like in the War Doctor audios, the main Dalek villain is this purple Dalek who's very, it's still Nicholas Briggs' voice, but he's very louche and sort of loungy. I was just hoping they'd have like this purple Dalek on a chaise lounge, just with maybe a cigarette, with those long cigarette holders and like a martini. Like, I don't ask for much, just what's in my head.
Yeah, perhaps with Verity Lambert lighting his cigarette.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
As the Mechanoid was lighting her cigarette way back in the day. Yeah.
This is the same Dalek model as the Seventh Doctor Big Finish one, just with a chrome dome.
Yeah, chrome dome.
Black.
Get it? It's bald. Really cool looking though. I love Dalek variants. It's funny when you take the same silhouette of the current new series Dalek, which, let's face it, is a really genuinely awesome refresh of the traditional Dalek, so much so that it's still the same even after that new paradigm nonsense from a few years ago. You can mix and match the colors of that thing, and it's superb.
The new paradigm thing of almost a decade ago.
My God!
Speaking of, I was hanging at a friend's place, and she's not a huge Doctor Who, but she's a Doctor Who fan though, and she had one of the new paradigm Daleks in a wind-up version. I'm like, hey, these guys! Everybody hates these guys.
Yeah.
We have
a couple of
We have a stuffed one that talks if you squeeze it. It says 3 or 4 phrases.
I have a couple of not Lego ones of those because that's what they came out as. So that's for mine. My new paradigm flirtation.
Well, the actual Lego ones don't look so good comparatively.
Because they're built out of Lego. That's the thing. Whereas they made actual. Just here you go. They're just 2 pieces, and then you can make a Dalek. But. There you go. That's the lot. That's it for our character options dollar report that took up most of this podcast. But I hope you enjoyed that. A couple other larger action dolly news, so to speak. Big Chief has re-upped their contract, making those 1/6 scale TV Doctor Who. So they'll be making more of those, and they have a new John Pertwee Third Doctor one coming. This one looks pretty cool. Because
those look pretty great.
He's got that little swift. I can tell I know the reference photo on which this figure is based. I think it's pretty cool with the cape sort of flapping in the wind. He's brandishing his sonic screwdriver and stuff, and it comes with all the assorted different accoutrements that these limited edition things have. They're probably very expensive. They're limited to only $500, but they're coming soon. So
500 units.
500 units, sorry. I said $500. It's not $500. It's probably $200.
But like most or all of the other ones, it comes with like changeable hands and things like that.
It's very exciting.
The little blurb for Big Chief re-upping, as you said, they're talking about future version or future things, including like a 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctor special commemorative edition of the Second Doctor. And then there's pictures of all this stuff here, or at least the reference photos anyway. But
Delgado,
but Cyberman Dalek and Delgado Master.
Oh, Delgado Master. That sounds.
Can you just imagine him looking over you with disdain? Oh, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Coming next month, this drops. Christopher Eccleston's memoir, I Love the Bones of You, which is a memoir, yes, but it's more a story about his, basically his relationship with his father, who suffered from dementia and stuff. So don't necessarily expect a tell-all, behind the scenes gripping anecdotes of his time on Doctor Who, because it's probably not going to happen. It's going to be a much more important story about his relationship with his father and how his career, increasing in stature was sort of like played off the fact that his dad was suffering from dementia during those times. So it's coming out. It's coming out next month, September 19th, I think it is, or something like that. Christopher Eccleston.
Something like that.
Yeah, Christopher Eccleston, I Love the Bones of You. That's coming out. A couple Big Finish thing here coming up. More Companion Chronicles. First Doctor Companion Chronicles Series 3 is coming out with several different stories written from the companion perspective, with Caroline Ford, Maureen O'Brien, Peter Purvis, and Annika Wills, as well as Lisa Bowerman, Elliot Chapman, who plays Ben. Can't think of his last name.
Jackson.
I couldn't think of his last name. How very strange. Stephen Critchlow, Mark Edelhunt, and Clive Hayward. So there you go. And the incomparable David Warner, who recently celebrated a birthday. So those are coming out very soon from BigFinish.com, where of course they love stories. Finally, in the news, before we get to the chat with Graham Kibble-White, Dr. Puppet ended last year. Was it last year now? I know Elisa Stern was working on it for like over a year, basically. And it ended. I won't spoil the ending here, but there was an original ending. And on the Dr. Puppet YouTube channel, Elisa breaks down, basically using some still photos, because they never actually animated it, what the original intended ending was going to be. So yes, you can watch that. You can watch that on the
narrated by Scott, the composer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He does great work on that. So links in the show notes to watch that there as well. So, all right, that's it for the news. After the break, Graham Kibble-White talking about TV years. This episode, once again, is brought to you by our friends at BBC Audio, publishers of hundreds of Doctor Who audiobooks with 2 new releases every month. Each audiobook, I will tell you, Warren and Chris, are performed by an actor who is closely involved with the series, like Tom Baker and David Tennant. They probably read their own stories, right? Like Tom Baker reads Tom Baker stories, and David Tennant reads David
What
Tennant
if you read
stories.
Tennant stories? What would that be like?
I would like for David Tennant to read a Tom Baker story and Tom Baker to read a David Tennant story. I think that'd be kind of fun, to be honest. Also, Nicholas Briggs and John Colshar, and a whole sorted a number of people, including Annika Wills, who reads The Faceless Ones and does it very well. It's the novelization written by Terrence Dix, the unabridged version. Is available from BBC Audio. It's a great listen. You could get it and listen to it before the animated version of the actual televised story comes out next year. It's all great. All these wonderfully produced audiobooks are yours to have from BBC Audio, and we thank them for helping to support Radio Free Skaro.
They didn't seem to be quite taking it seriously.
There's too many jokes.
There's too many
Humor
jokes.
is a nice thing.
See, I think one of the most appalling things that ever brought into that program was K9.
It's a dreadful thing.
Oh, you agree, do you?
Yeah.
I think it's dreadful. I mean, Doctor Who is supposed to be a man of genius who could defeat any adversary and would not tolerate some mechanical idiot thing like that in any way.
Telling what to do.
Yes, I mean, it is quite ridiculous to me. It just makes a mockery of the whole thing. I mean, he was far too intelligent to have a mock-up dog. It was quite a nice joke. It could have been a joke for one episode of one program.
It
was
originally
planned, but
it cost so much building this thing.
Yes.
They said, we can't scrap that, they'll have to stay.
Yes, bad.
That's John Pertwee talking to Gordon Roxborough and Richard Walter in 1979, an interview that is featured in the 5th issue of TV Years, an all sci-fi edition hitting newsstands on August 6th. And I'm joined again by the editor of such a magazine, Mr. Graham Kibble-White. Hello, Graham.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I feel like we talked to you last year, was it now?
Yeah, it was.
Launched?
For the launch of the first issue of the 80s. I think it was almost this time last year.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I feel like this is just a culmination of probably what you've been wanting to do an all sci-fi edition of the magazine. Has this sort of been in the back pocket for a while?
When we were pitching it internally with our publishers, Bauer Media, that was one of the ones that we said that we would do. You know, that was one of the themes. And actually, our MD had said, "Well, that's a bit niche, isn't it?" And I said, perhaps foolishly, we'll find out. I said, that's the one with the most dedicated readership. And obviously, I love sci-fi anyway. I wouldn't say the whole thing has been a Trojan horse just to get to sci-fi. However, I would say. And no undue hyperbole, but I would say I think we've got the best lineup of interviewees and features from any of the issues so far in this sci-fi one.
Yeah, including Paul Darrow's last interview that he ever gave, sadly. Some current interviews with Joanna Lumley and David McCallum of Sapphire and Steel fame, of course. But for the purposes of our discussion, we'll start with some vintage interviews that have never been heard or transcribed before. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So it comes from Stuart Manning. And so the clip that you've heard there is John Pertwee, and those were interviews done for his fan club. And he did them. I mean, the piece that we have draws from conversations he had over 78 and 79. And they've never been kind of extensively compiled here. And Stephen, you've read the piece, haven't you? And I would say I think this captures John Pertwee in kind of quite acerbic and unusually candid form. And he's doing that thing that I think most doctors don't do, which is he's talking about the show as it was in the present day then. And he's actually critiquing some of the innovations that come in under Tom Baker, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, him dumping on K9.
There you go. Yeah, how dare he?
On other aspects of the show. I find it fascinating, his thoughts on potentially returning to the show.
Yeah,
that's what I love about these contemporary interviews, is that he doesn't have quite yet the benefit of hindsight, nor does he have sort of the show. Well, I mean, he's a natural showman anyway, but sort of that stage showiness of telling anecdotes to fans at many different conventions on the circuit, like that hasn't quite happened yet. So we kind of get a raw original take from him.
Yeah, and I think he also feels, you're right, there's no kind of posterity yet. So I think it still feels quite present to him, and he clearly still feels as if he has ownership of it, to a certain extent. And then, years and years hence of doing convention circuits and things, I find that a lot of these actors then, nowadays more, they kind of segue to the anecdote, because they've worked up their patter, haven't they? Their routine. Whereas I feel this is something quite different, and it's the same with the Tom Baker piece as well, which comes from 77 when he's in the role. He hasn't got his arsenal of being mistaken for Shirley Williams or a homeless man recognizing him on the street, or he hasn't got that arsenal yet. So I think both make really revealing interviews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Tom Baker one is from 1977.
Yeah,
which is like this almost predates the standard convention run. So to see those interviews transcribed, I mean, what was that like? Researching and sort of just like listening to the man speak back in the day when he's at the peak of his powers, really.
Well, you'd have to ask Stuart Manning that, because he's the one who's put the piece together for us. Although, he sent me, as he was transcribing there, he would send me snippets. And there's a little thing that Tom says, which we run at the very end of the piece, which is, for an editor, is perfect for a piece about Tom Baker 40 years on and how he might be remembered. He really sums that up really well. But I think the thing that's fascinating about this encounter is that in 1977, when Tom was meeting the fans, most of the time that was meeting kids, and children, where he would be the Doctor. Actually, this comes from a convention where he is meeting, this is almost the first encounter between the current Doctor and the grown-up audience, the aficionados, the devotees. And so he has to find a different way to address them. He can't be, hello, what's your name? He can't do all of that. So instead, he's actually engaging with it in quite a thoughtful way. And he talks about things like the current day accusations about increased violence in the programme, and he responds to that. I mean, his line is, I don't think there's nearly been enough. But it's a really, again, you've read this. I think it's a more thoughtful, dare I say, less glib Tom than we're used to.
Yeah, you sort of expect him to, he exaggerates for amusing effect at times during his many interviews that he's done since then. But when he talks about how big he thinks the size of Leela's knife should be, I'm not too sure how to take that. I'm not too sure if he's joking or not. Does he really think her knife needs to be bigger?
Yeah, and actually, if we switch back to the John Pertwee thing, that's something else I find really surprising, is that he has opinions on Leela. He doesn't think she's the right fit for the show. He doesn't think that you should have a companion who is in, unusual dress as she is. And so it's really interesting. Again, it's this kind of present tenseness, but from the past, isn't it, that I think really resonates in both the pieces.
Yeah, I'm mildly surprised at how somewhat prickly John Pertwee is towards some of his previous co-stars, like John Levine, and even Katie Manning isn't spared the barrels there a little bit. He's very flattering of her, but there's a point where he sort of says, sometimes she can just be a bit dull, and I have to kick her in the shins to get her going again.
Yeah, he has a weird kind of, and I don't think any of it's said with malice. And in writing the piece up, Stuart's been very careful to frame it that, there was always a kind of a raconteur element to Pertwee, but he's sort of passingly rude about people, isn't he? There's a bit where, apropos of nothing, he just refers to John Levine as a sycophant, but then says, isn't it a shame he's no longer acting anymore? So it's a very strange mixture, but I think a really fascinating mixture.
It is. So, when you're coming to put together a magazine like this, I mean, you can't exactly just sort of find a previously published interview or something. But, John Pertwee's no longer with us. Tom Baker's perhaps a little more loquacious than he was back in the 80s, perhaps. So how do you go about, is finding long lost, never heard before interviews like this sort of become a linchpin of putting together a magazine like this?
Well, actually, I mean, those are the most of the time with TV is it's been brand new interviews because the people are still around or whatever. Now, when I knew we were going to be doing a sci-fi issue, when we made that decision, thinking about what are we going to do for Doctor Who was my single biggest headache, because it's so well covered, and you're thinking, what can we do that DWM hasn't done, that SFX hasn't done? And we potentially could have got a new interview with Tom Baker, but I sort of not confident that you could get anything new from him. And actually, it was Stuart Manning who had said, and, it's one of these things, Stephen, it's surprising how much you forget. He had mentioned that he had got these, a Tom Baker and a John Pertwee unpublished piece. And this was a lot earlier this year. And as soon as he said that to me, I immediately said, can we have them? I mean, that solved a real problem. And I want Doctor Who to be the focus of this. I wanted it to be Tom Baker is our cover star. You're not going to get better than doing Doctor Who. So it was. I got very lucky. I think I got very lucky that this discovery was made around the time when we were just coming together, and that I happened to have a conversation with Stuart. I happened to say we're going to be doing a sci-fi issue, I just reflecting on it now. It seems almost silly, doesn't it? How it kind of fell in my lap.
Mm-hmm. So has Stuart ever actually let you listen to these tapes, or is he keeping them under lock and key? No, I've heard bits of them, and we've kind of seen transcripts. But one also doesn't want to ask, do they? Because it's his thing. I'm very happy with what he's done for us. But if I
if I was him, I would probably be keeping them. And, also there's other people have provided things to him and all this kind of stuff. So I'm happy to let him keep a hold of it. I'm just grateful that, when it came to writing them, we had long discussions about what to do with the best way to present it, how to write things up. So Tom's piece is a kind of, it's a scattershot thing, because it was at a convention where he's being asked questions, and sometimes he's being asked very detailed questions that don't really work in a magazine. And so with Tom's thing, it's just Tom on different subjects. And also it means you just get 100% Tom. There's no narrative. And with John's thing, we felt because it's more conversational and discursive, and he's talking to people that he knows, people who do his fan club, you could run that as more of a narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whereas Tom Baker's more or less taking questions from the audience, I assume. And
yeah, that's my understanding of it, yeah.
Yeah, and as anyone who's attended a question and answer panel at a convention, you know how they never flow. They're just just scattershot questions. People line up and ask for questions and stuff. But it's fascinating. Like hearing is like Tom Baker's comments on like Verity Lambert and what she thinks of the show now, and speaking about, well, you have been on the show in 10 years. I mean, it's changed,
Yeah, and all this, I mean, he even talks, doesn't he, I think, about the science fiction books that he was reading at the time. But yes, it is all this stuff. And now one almost thinks that if you mention Verity Lambert to Tom now, he would kind of probably just feign ignorance, wouldn't he? But, he has his shtick now is that, was there any other doctors? That's his kind of thing now. But, back then, he's very cognizant of what a great show he's in. But I think he was more cognizant that he is the fourth. He is the fourth in this role.
Mm-hmm. And yes, I will not spoil it here, but the last few lines of the Tom Baker interview is almost worth the price of the magazine itself. It's a perfect way to wrap that one up.
And I should say that also one of the things we try to do with this is to try and get in some photos that are less familiar to Doctor Who fans. Now, one doesn't, we're not going to be perverse here, and we're not going to put in really arcane things. And in fact, at one point we found in our research for this, just in one of the photo libraries, a picture from a Patrick Troughton story that we'd never seen before. And we were thinking, is there any excuse we could come up with to wodge that into the piece? And ultimately, you can't, because you've got to go where the piece takes you. But we've got some lovely shots of Tom back in the day meeting young fans. We've got shots taken, a lot of it from the Rex archive, a lot of it from stuff he was doing with ITV around this time as well. So there are, if you're talking about Leela and a knife, you have to have Leela and her knife. But I think there will be shots in here that will be novel to people who've seen, most Doctor Who. I'm not saying they're exclusives or anything like that, but I think hopefully it will be novel. It will be interesting.
Yeah, it's always the shots of Tom Baker, John Pertwee, whoever in the role, meeting fans back in those days, because it's such a different thing compared to this, Comic-Cons nowadays and, massive prices for photos and everything like that. Like, it's just Tom sitting at a table and there are children, like, standing around him. Like, it just seems so informal, Oh,
it's beautiful, isn't it? And this little kid who I think is getting something signed. There's just such sort of eye contact between the two of them. Mm. So, when one comes across things like that, this little kid's almost pointing at him. I don't know whether they're having a heated discussion, and there's jelly babies spilling out all over the table. There are the mums all enwrapped as well, what's going on. But these kind of things are just so beautiful to see. Mm-hmm. And we have the lovely business that we've got a photo of Tom sat there reading Police Box magazine, which I hadn't seen before, and that's he's clearly loving the joke in the picture.
Yeah, what that's from? What's that from?
That's from The Book Tower, which was an ITV show that he did, and it's one of the things you discover is that some ITV shows, some quite small ITV shows, it was a different era, Stephen, had. Clearly there wasn't a budget problem in regards to photography. So The Book Tower Tom's stint on that, very short stint, there were literally hundreds of photos taken. Some of them you look at, you think, gosh, that could have been an episodic from State of Decay or something, because I've seen pictures of him riding a donkey, reading a book through a woodland. So many. I mean, it's the tip of the iceberg. If you're going to slightly non-Doctor Who-y sources, there are a lot of Doctor Who-y pictures that you can find.
Man, that's fascinating. I love seeing just that era of Tom Baker in pictures. Be it magazine articles about a day in the life of Tom Baker wandering around pubs, or
oh yeah, that's a cracker, isn't it? Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's terrific.
Yeah. There are other science fiction shows other than Doctor Who, I'm told. There are, of course, there's lots, and there are many of them covered in here. The David McCallum and Joanna Lumley double interview is quite a score, talking about the 40th anniversary of Sapphire and Steel.
Yeah, well, let me tell you then. I can tell you exactly how those came together. And it's one of these things where, I was aware that it's 40 years of Sapphire and Steel, which, rather usefully, one can headline Ruby Anniversary. So, suddenly everything is coming together. Huh. And I emailed Joanna Lumley's agent thinking this will be my first no along the way to getting a yes eventually in one way or another, because one has to be persistent. So I thought, I'll clock up my first no. I'll email her agent and say, we want to do a piece about Sapphire and Steel. And the reply came, I think, within minutes saying she can do next week, 3 p.m. She clearly adores the show. And I got Richard Marson to do the interview because, as we know, he's a terrific writer. He knows all this stuff. And then with David McCallum, once we got Joanna Lumley, because we don't pretend that we interviewed them separately, but once we got Joanna Lumley, then the impetus to get David McCallum, you do think, gosh, we could possibly pull this off. And eventually I got him through. Now, which US station is it that screens NCIS? Is it?
I think it's CBS, I think. Yeah.
CBS. So through their press office, and again, it was one of those kind of... it's almost like a war of attrition. I kept mailing them, and they made the mistake in that they kept replying to me. So, and they kept saying, oh, we haven't heard yet, we'll get back to you. And then one day I'm in the office and my phone rings and it's David McCallum, and he's saying, I could do the interview with you in 30 minutes. Now, because Richard had interviewed Joanna, I was very keen for him to interview David. So I had to track Richard down. He was in a dubbing suite because, he makes TV shows. And I managed to get hold of him 15 minutes before David was ready and say, look, this is really short notice. Could you do it? And if not, I'll do it. But could you? Because you've spoken to Joanna and you can tell David what she said. And so he got the guys in the dubbing suite to actually rig up his phone through the desk so that he could record it. And he did the interview. And there it was. And it's such a lovely piece because they both adore the show. They speak very... Yeah, my worry was that they might just give you a kind of a vague general chat about it because, it's 40 years old. But no, they speak in detail. Great rapport between the two of them. We managed to find, for example, Joanna talks about the cover artwork for a Look-In annual that she owns. So we managed to find the picture of her being presented the cover artwork. I just got, again, I sound smug, but got very lucky. Everything kind of came together, and it's one of the Doctor Who thing, the Sapphire and Steel thing. Once I had those two features, you think, gosh, this could turn into something quite special, this edition. And, I hope people will think it is.
Absolutely. I mean, for those that haven't seen Sapphire and Steel, it's amazing how accessible it is now. I think it's on the app Tubi, Tubi. It's for free. I think that might even be on YouTube. So this is, some of these shows are actually popping back on some of these streaming services. And you're right, it is fascinating. I mean, you watch the show, it is made like Doctor Who. It's multicam, but on somewhat cheap sets. In fact, it looks even cheaper than Doctor Who. But as Joanna Lumley refers to in the interview, like there's a certain... It almost adds to the nature of the show. Like the fact that it looks slightly unreal is actually part of what the charm is. And I just find it fascinating that they remember it so fondly all these years on.
And my favourite detail, my favourite Sapphire and Steel story is the one known as Adventure 2, set in a railway station. And David McCallum tells this tale that when he was on the set and he could see the tunnel at the far end, and he thought, oh, there's something missing here. So he went and found a big piece of cardboard and cut out a little kind of light at the end of the tunnel shape and then added it to the set, just so you got that kind of false perspective, because apparently, I didn't know this, his background was in set design. So it's just those little tiny things. Or, isn't there's the anecdote about the colour of blue that they liked for Sapphire's eyes when she was taking back time. Was it it was someone in the canteen staff, it was the colour of her pinafore, and so that was actually the fabric that they would overlay onto her eyes, because it was just the right blue that they liked.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's fascinating. And of course, you've done the black and white photo up very nicely on the front page there of that interview with just the blue in her eyes being the only color bit there. It pops. It's very nice. And
here I am again talking about photography, but Sapphire and Steel is an incredible amount of photography existing for that. I think there was we were, I had a stockpile of about 600 pictures, great behind the scenes stuff. There's one of my favourites is Joanna Lumley. I think she's in makeup and she's got a cigarette on the go. All these just wonderful candid things that you just don't get in terms of modern TV shows. They're not recorded in that way. Because there isn't the money to have professional photographers there covering every single kind of element of what's going on.
It is a fascinating look into it, because I've only ever seen the episodes, and I think I've seen one documentary that's been on YouTube. But apart from that, this series is like almost a mystery to me. So to see them talk about it and seeing the pictures is just fascinating to me. I mentioned earlier that Paul Darrow, who we sadly lost earlier this year, gives his final interview for your magazine. What was it like, sort of being the home for the last words, so to speak, of the great Mr. Darrow?
Well, I mean, it's incredibly sad. I mean, obviously, it's Steve Berry who did the piece with him. I mean, one of the things that Steve said to me, once we realised, how this situation had panned out, was that he'd always adored Paul Darrow, and he'd actually been quite anxious about interviewing him. This kind of, but he said, oh, "I'm so glad I told him, when we were talking, how much he means to me." And it's again, Paul. I mean, he is. The piece is I think it's a very warm piece. Steve talks about some things that I think perhaps he hasn't been asked before. We talk a bit about, for example, that he had a regular editorial in Marvel Comics' Blake 7 Monthly. He talks about things like that. He talks about what it was like working at the BBC at the time, making Sapphire and Steel, him and Jan Chappell sneaking into the back of Top of the Pops. All these, these kind of things about not just the stories and the mythos. And of course, he talks very well about Avon and what was brilliant about Avon as a character. And we do get his kind of his feelings today. He talks about if he has any regrets, and he talks about a conversation he had with Terry Nation about how they would like to have finished the show. Although, in my opinion, it finished brilliantly anyway.
Yeah, I can't think of a better. I think it's one of the top endings of any show ever. So much so that even now, this many years on, I try not to talk about it, just in case someone who has never seen the show gets to go into that episode, the last episode, cold without knowing how it ends. But they do talk about it. There's even an insert talking about how the last shots of the episode came to be. It's quite something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, this is a show that I have not had much access to over the years, but one that I've always been fascinated about. It's the Tomorrow People. So there's a whole feature on this one as well.
Yes, there is. So Richard Atkinson, who's our designer, is also a great writer. So he met up with Nicholas Young at BAFTA in London, and again, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, how there are so many kind of natural raconteurs in sci-fi television, or maybe they have been honed by convention circuits or things. So he talks about his stints playing John in the original Tomorrow People. He makes some, I think, quite bold assertions about the quality of what they were doing in the Tomorrow People versus what was happening in Doctor Who at the time, which I think is great. I loved reading his remarks. The other thing that we do is we track down the guy who did the Tomorrow People opening titles, and the opening titles are fantastic. And this gentleman, I think, he also did The World at War. He did quite a few other things, and then for British viewers, his career took a kind of an interesting twist, and he was actually part of another very iconic TV moment, which is there was an early evening news show called the Today programme, and on that the anchor Bill Grundy had this confrontation with the Sex Pistols in which he baited them into swearing and using profane language. And actually the chap who did the Tomorrow People title sequence, he was the director of that episode. So I mean, who would have thought?
That is fascinating. Wow. You dirty rotter. That one. Yeah. That's
that's precisely the one. Yeah.
Very famous clip. That's that's fascinating. Wow. I think a TV network here in the early 90s for some reason decided it was a kids network buying up basically every single family or kids show that the BBC ever produced as the way to success. And so they bought all Doctor Who and the tripods. And I think they actually did buy the Tomorrow People. And I saw bits of it before they yanked it. So it's always, any TV show. This is part of my fascination, I suppose, with Sapphire and Steel. Anything that's made in the same way as Doctor Who is going to be appealing to a nerd like me, So Tomorrow People is right in there.
And if we also we had two features on shows that I think are not particularly well regarded. So one was a sci-fi series called Invasion Earth, which was in the 90s, and now that was written by Jed Mercurio, who is now the hottest name in television because of Bodyguard and Line of Duty. Massive shows. So Dave Golder got in touch with Jed, and Jed was very happy. And if people have read Jed's stuff, interviews with him or seen him on Twitter, they'll know he's incredibly outspoken. So Jed was very happy to talk about that show, talk about what he thinks went right with it, what went wrong with it. And so, it's thrilling to have a really hot name from television today who's talking about, a show that he did, in this genre from a while ago. And similarly, Anthony Horowitz, who, again, huge author, very successful writer, creator of the Alex Rider series, he talks about his short-lived BBC One series Crime Traveller, which, I think some people saw in the noughties as a sort of an insufficient replacement for Doctor Who. And so journalist James Rampton spoke to Anthony for us there, and he gets his sense on, again, what potentially went wrong with the show, but also what his feelings are towards it today. And one gets this sense from Anthony Horowitz that he feels there's a little bit of unfinished business there. The other thing that we've got, which is very writer-led, is we have, again, it's separate interviews, but they're new interviews with Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, who are the creators of Red Dwarf. And I don't know how well you know the show, but there was, I think, around Series 6, their writing team broke up, and Doug Naylor still remains with the show today and is writing, and Rob Grant went off to do his own things. And actually, we have them both talking about, how the show came together, but also they do talk about why they split up. And probably most interestingly of all, Rob Grant talks today about if he could get his hands back on Red Dwarf, well, how would he feel about that, and what would he do with it, which I think is really, really interesting.
That is, I was Red Dwarf was a staple here back in the 90s. It would often air after Doctor Who on Saturday nights on PBS stations. So a whole generation of people sort of looked at Red Dwarf as kind of the heir apparent to Doctor Who in a way. Like, this is what the BBC would be making now if it was Doctor Who, and a lot of it was spectacular. Some of the model shots, especially in those Red Dwarf
amazing
series, and so a lot of people were watching it for the humor, but also I think they were also impressed by what they were doing visually. So by the time that Series 6 came along, that the arc of searching for Red Dwarf, I think a lot of people were quite into the dramatic element of the show. So it garnered quite a large following over here.
Yeah. And then we have Andrew Pixley's in there doing, what he does best, which is a deep dive. So he's looking at Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now, the thing I've learnt working with Andrew is he kind of hides his light under a bushel. And for the other pieces he's done for TV years, behind the scenes on things like Bagpuss or Our Friends in the North, he secures really kind of great interviews with people, but he never makes a song and dance about it. They become part of his narrative. People are quoted, you don't really know how. It's because he's tracked them down. So in this case, he got hold of Simon Jones, who played Arthur Dent. So this time I've actually said to Andrew, look, I'm specifically going to put in the piece that you speak to Simon Jones. I mean, you can't get better than that. It's the star of the show. So we've got Simon Jones. We've also got John Lloyd, who was the producer of the radio version, and he talks about why he was basically kicked off the TV version of Hitchhikers. And there's also a separate piece because in getting hold of John, it became obvious that he loves science fiction. And this is a guy who, has Blackadder on his CV or Spitting Image, QI, big shows. His passion, though, is science fiction. So he talks, and I think maybe for the first time, about his kind of love of science fiction, this project that he's been working on, I think, since the 90s, that he, which is a quartet of books, but he's writing them with the idea that you could also make a TV series out of that. And I think it's really, really interesting. The other person we have, I guess, leaning more towards the kind of the auteur side of things, we've got Charlie Brooker and Black Mirror. And I got that, via our friends at Netflix. And Charlie loves all this stuff. He loves old telly. He's always been a kind of a big TV nerd. So I had a nice chat with him about his own relationship with science fiction. It turns out he's a massive fan of Nigel Neal. He talks in this about a Nigel Neal script that he tried to option for Black Mirror but couldn't get, which I think is really interesting. Him and potentially Mark Gatiss were doing that. And he just talks about, I think my leading question was, why are there no laser guns in Black Mirror? Why is it not that kind of sci-fi? So that's the jumping off point for that chat. Another piece which I think is great is from Samira Ahmed, who she's very well known over here. She's presents Front Row on Radio 4, Newswatch on BBC Television, and she's a fascinating contributor to the magazine because she has very high kind of culture touch points in her life, but also very low culture touch points. So one of her big passions, who knew, is Space 1999. She adores Space 1999. So she's done a lovely piece about Space 1999, what it meant to her. One of the people she talks to is Nick Tate, who played Alan Carter. And he talks about his feelings about how Space 1999 was kind of squandered in its second series when they brought in, is it Fred Friedberg, isn't it, from Star Trek? The guy who ruined Star Trek basically came in and then ruined Space. So he talks, very openly about that. And also a name that Doctor Who fans will recognise, Catherine Schell, who played Maya in Space 1999. She's in there as well, and she's got some wonderful remarks that she makes about the show. I think there's one line which I love where she says something like, "I was told I had class and that I would sometimes let it show," which I think is a great remark. The other thing that I was really keen to do, and this is where one has to think, we've got to do something which is TV yearsy, that's not SFX-y, that's not Sci-Fi Now-y. We've done a piece on Captain Zepp, Space Detective, which was a kids' whodunit show in the 80s. And Adam McLean, who actually, he's a TV producer, but he's a good writer. He loves his old telly as well. He was very keen to do a piece on that. So he has tracked down the producer of Captain Zepp, Chris Pilkington. He tracks down Paul Greenwood, who played the original incarnation of Captain Zepp. I don't know if you've ever seen that outtake where Peter Davison as the Fifth Doctor kind of gate crashes the Captain Zepp set and says, "Hello, I'm here to welcome you to the galaxy."
I have never seen that. No.
There you go. Well, it's worth tracking down. So he talks to him, and then he talks to the guys who did the theme song as well. So everything you could want about Captain Zepp is in this piece, and it's a silly show, but it was an imaginative show, and it was a show made with integrity. And so it's just those kind of things like that. We've got Diane Morgan as well, who people know as a comedy actor on television over here, best known as the character Philomena Kunk. She loves the 70s German Anglo series Star Maidens, which is a preposterous sci-fi venture which starred Gareth Thomas from Blake Seven, amongst other people.
That's why
she
I
loves
know
that
of it.
show.
Yeah, really,
she loves it genuinely, and so she showed up for the interview. Victoria Thomas was interviewing her, and she showed up also for so we could photograph her with her own Star Maidens annual and her own bit of Star Maidens cosplay. So she's the real deal.
Man, that is fascinating. Why do you taunt me like this and tease me, Graham? Because I'm not sure. I know you can find this on magazine shelves in the UK, but I'm in Canada and I want this. Is there any way for people in North America to get this magazine?
Well, this is a good question, and I haven't really looked into the international shipping. There is a website, and from the 6th of August, which is our official on-sale date, although issue 4 seemed to find its way into the shops earlier for some reason, but from the 6th of August, you should, if you can't find it in shops, you can get it from greatmagazines.co.uk/TV years, and there are international shipping options. I haven't investigated it. I don't know what the shipping's like to Canada, so... all I can say is certainly if you're in the UK, the service works very well. But have a look and see what there is. And it is something I would, people do ask about back issues now more and more of TV years. And it's something I would like to address in one way or another.
Yeah, because this is just a fabulous piece of work on the part of you and your whole team at TV Years, Graham. You should be proud. You should be proud of what you've done here. It looks very good, and I look forward to one day reading either by exorbitant shipping costs, or perhaps I'll ask friends in the UK to pick it up now and bring it over with them to Gallifrey 1 next February. It'll be worth the wait. I'm sure.
That's precisely what people should do. Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to. And always, one of the things I love when the new issue of TV Years comes out, and I don't know why it started, but people now photograph themselves with a new issue, sometimes in corresponding kind of costume, pertaining to whatever the theme is, and they tweet at TV Years. And so we'll always retweet that. We always love seeing our readers, and we always love the way the readers kind of really connect with the magazine.
Mm-hmm. And with the Sci-Fi issue, you have many different opportunities to cosplay as your favorite mainstream, or indeed, in the case of Captain Zepp, your more obscure science fiction costume. Super. TV Years Sci-Fi edition coming out August 6th. Graham Kibble-White, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. Graham Kibble-White is a fine fellow. I like that. As soon as we stopped that interview, which I know neither of you have heard yet, Warren and Chris, but the listeners have, he asked me, why didn't you ask about the tripods? And I thought, well, because I figured that instead of just doing a sci-fi issue about all of sci-fi, I figured the tripods deserves its own actual issue. So I'm hoping future...
You're a tripod chauvinist is what you are.
Yeah, perhaps a future edition of TV Years will just be about the tripods.
Well, I mean, if Blake 7 doesn't warrant its own, then...
or Doctor Who, or Captain Zepp, or Sapphire and Steel, exactly.
Yeah, what about Star Cops?
Star
What about
Cops.
Star Cops?
Star Cops, brilliant. Looking forward to more episodes of Star Cops from Big Finish, by the way. Just so you know. That's it for episode 700, everyone. Next week... is 701, as usually happens. We do these in numerical order, and it's our last classic series commentary of the calendar year, probably, with Terror of the Zygons. Good old Terror of the Zygons from season 13. So join us for that. It's a rollicking good time as we watch the first story to feature the Zygons, but certainly not the last. Here on Radio Free Skaro next week. So, until next time, I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.
You've been listening to Radio Free Skaro. Find us online at radiofreeskaro.com, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Radio Free Skaro, subscribe to us on iTunes, and donate to the show at patreon.com/Radio Free Skaro. Thank you.